Hello again, and welcome back to Journey of Self-Awareness, your YouTube channel for personal growth and self-exploration. Today I want to talk about purification practices, which are such an important part of a spiritual path. These are immensely powerful and transformative practices because they help us clear major obstacles that are standing between us and a deeper connection with the divine. If you've ever felt weighted down by emotional burdens, regrets, or unresolved wounds from the past, then this video is for you. Purification practices are tools that we use for healing, for transformation, for renewal. They can result in sometimes very sudden and rather dramatic transformation in a person. If you think of experiences like sudden religious conversions or insights, or in Christianity being born again, these are the kinds of experiences that can result from engaging in purification practices, which include things like forgiveness and repentance, redemption, and introspection. Of course, increased self-awareness is always the beginning and often the goal of such spiritual practices. Forgiveness and repentance and redemption, or seeking assistance from the divine, these are not abstract concepts. They're practical actions that we can take to release mental or emotional clutter or obstacles that are blocking us on a spiritual path. For example, forgiveness, both for ourselves and for others, is a cornerstone of purification practices because forgiveness allows us to let go of grudges and guilt and shame, and it frees us from the chains of the past. So many spiritual traditions emphasize rituals of, say, redemption or confession, or other practices that help us acknowledge and release negativity while committing ourselves to positive change. That's the other side of the coin here. So purification practices are nearly universal across spiritual traditions because the challenges that they address are also universal in humankind. Every spiritual tradition recognizes that our minds and our hearts can become cluttered with unresolved beliefs or emotions or harmful thoughts and attachments and so on, which all act as unconscious barriers that keep us from fully experiencing divine grace and divine love. Of course, some of us don't feel like we're worthy of the divine, of receiving divine grace or divine love, and purification practices can go a long way to helping alleviate feelings of unworthiness. I guess the important point here is that purification practices clear away the obstacles that block our connection to the divine, and they open us up to the receipt of the divine. And we can think of this as like cleaning a window. The light's always there, but until we wipe the dirt away, the light will not really be able to adequately shine through and affect us. So, who needs purification practices? The truth is that most of us do, because many of us are carrying a lot of negative baggage around with us, and deeply ingrained negative mental impressions that may be operating below the threshold of our conscious awareness. So much of this operates under the surface where we're not really always very aware of it, and there's patterns that have been ingrained through past experiences, often from childhood or early traumatic events or other things that have happened to us or negative things that we've done. And all of these, including our cultural conditioning and our backgrounds, can shape our thoughts and behaviors without us really realizing it. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that spiritual practices or purification practices can often be quite successful and quite beneficial, even though we're not aware of what they're doing to us below the surface, the positive impact that they're having on what some traditions call negative karma or the sanskaras or sins. So, of course, some of us are carrying wounds with us that need to be healed, and healing wounds, even when we're not aware of them, it's vital, because without purification, we often carry resentments and unhealed grief or a sense of unworthiness, as I mentioned. And these things can impact us throughout our lives. We can carry them very often throughout our lives. One of the things you'll hear spiritual practitioners who begin to wake up say is that all of a sudden they'll receive an insight or what Jesus called a revelation, that they realize that the way they've been thinking about something in the past has been very wrong and has been negatively impacting them all these years. And by realizing it, they're able to let it go. This is also one of the goals of purification practices, to help us work through and alleviate unresolved guilt and shame and grudges and regrets. And it also means addressing the unhealed emotional wounds and this false sense of unworthiness that hinders so many of us. So I guess I should say that when it comes to negative emotions and past wounds, the waters can run very deep. And I should say that if at any time you begin to feel overwhelmed or that you need additional support, you should definitely seek out professional help. Seek out a mental health professional, because therapists are trained to help you process powerful emotions such as anger and jealousy, hatred, resentment, and so on. And sometimes when we begin to process these kinds of powerful emotions, it can lead to feelings of anxiety, for example, or maybe even fear or insecurity. These are the kinds of things that a mental health professional will be able to help you address. If you're struggling, by all means, seek outside help. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a trained clinician. I've read much of the clinical literature, but I'm not a licensed professional, and so everything I say here must be taken with that in mind. The point is, though, that purification practices help us face and shed such emotional obstacles and make room for the divine in our lives. It makes room in our hearts and in our minds and helps us to welcome the divine into our lives so that it's operating in a profound way on a daily basis. In fact, purification practices are very often an open and intentional invitation for the divine to enter our lives. And we seek divine guidance and assistance on this path. And especially when we're seeking divine forgiveness for things that we may have done in the past that causes us to feel some remorse or regret. So when we begin to work through and shed these negative beliefs and emotions, then the benefits are profound. It's like clearing a cluttered room. It creates space for light, for peace, for divine presence to fulfill or to fill our lives. And it allows us to heal and to grow and to align ourselves with virtues like love and compassion and gratitude. Gratitude is so important because it helps us focus on what's positive rather than on what's negative. And of course, by doing so, we're making room for grace, forgiveness, and as I mentioned often, very profound transformative experiences. Now, in the past videos that we've been making in this little series on spiritual practices, I've spoken about spiritual practices in more or less general terms, and I'm not going to deviate from that today, which means I'm not going to tell you how to practice specific purification practices. There are so many spiritual purification practices to choose from, such as Vajrasattva practice in Tibetan Buddhism, which I've engaged in and which I've found to be very beneficial. Or there's practices like confession and redemption in Christianity and many others. So I encourage you to explore specific practices on your own and delve into them more deeply. Find one that resonates most strongly with you. Tailor it to fit your own circumstances if you like. And practice it on a regular basis. So another point that I should make, of course, is that confession and redemption or forgiveness, these practices are not about punishment. They're about positive transformations. They're about aligning ourselves with the divine and making a commitment to become good and better persons and to follow a spiritual path. And they're about positive transformation, and they all begin with honest and humble self-awareness and self-reflection, but mindfulness and increased self-awareness, that's really only the beginning, because purification practices I mentioned often involve profound acts of self-forgiveness and divine forgiveness. If you haven't seen my previous videos on both of these topics, I would recommend you go back and search for them in the channel. So purification practices allow us to forgive ourselves for past mistakes and to forgive others for things that they have done, for the pain or the harm that they may have caused in our lives, and beyond forgiving others, as I mentioned, we can seek divine forgiveness for ourselves with a sincere heart and with humility. So, as we open ourselves to the past and begin to reveal deeper aspects of ourselves, a lot can come to the surface, and it may not always be easy to acknowledge some of our deeper emotions or our past actions, and maybe even the harm that we've caused others. So self-compassion is key here. Practicing self-care is so important, and so are acceptance and surrender. So try to non-judgmentally accept whatever arises during this process, whether it's guilt or anger or sadness. I don't mean that you have to embrace and welcome negative emotions. No. On the contrary, I suggests that you simply remain calm and acknowledge that these feelings exist, that these things may have happened, and avoid resisting or suppressing your feelings. Don't do anything to them. Instead, meet your feelings with compassion and allow them to dissolve naturally. Here again, the point that I'm trying to make is that if you simply allow your feelings or insights to arise and then sit with them patiently and calmly without trying to act on them or without judging them, then they will very often dissipate on their own. And when they do, it can be so liberating. It's be like a weight being lifted off your shoulders. Now, in Tibetan Buddhism, purification often involves what Tsongkhapa called the four powers. First, we acknowledge our mistakes with genuine remorse. We accept the fact that we may have acted harmfully in the past, and we fully recognize and acknowledge what we've done. And then we seek divine support and then counteract the negative actions with positive ones like kindness and compassion or meditative reflection and understanding. And then the fourth power is making a solemn commitment to never repeat such actions again in the future. This is so important. So purification practices in Tibetan Buddhism, like the Vajrasattva practice that I mentioned, they utilize all these principles from Tsongkhapa's teachings and combine deep remorse for past misdeeds and with a sincere intention to transform ourselves and to never do these things again. And sometimes this can involve solemn vows to never repeat our past misdeeds. We also transform ourselves with a daily practice that incorporates such things as mindfulness meditation, self-reflection, and positive affirmations, which can help us replace negative beliefs with positive ones. This is also very important. The takeaway from all of this is that purification practices help us heal, and they help us grow, and they help us become better versions of ourselves. We can clear away negativity and open ourselves to the divine and create a heart that's filled with love and compassion and gratitude. And remember, this requires humility and self-reflection and a commitment to kindness, not only toward others, but toward yourself as well. By engaging in purification practices, we're not only inviting the divine grace into our lives, but we're also becoming a source of light and positivity for those around us in the larger world. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for joining me on Journey of Self-Awareness. If you found this video inspirational, please like, subscribe, and share it with others on the path. And until next time, keep growing, keep healing, and stay committed to your path.